Russian warships in Russian waters are supposed to be safe. That's what the Kremlin has always thought. Of course, those in the Black Sea are another story. They've been targeted constantly by Ukraine, and now that Ukraine has drones and missiles, Russia could almost expect that. But there could be no attack on a Russian ship outside of those contested waters, right? Wrong. Ukraine just pulled off a stunning long-range strike that has deprived Russia of one of its newest warships. Putin's navy now knows it's defenseless against Ukraine's long-range attacks, as Ukraine has just struck a warship in Russia's safe zone. On October 4th, United 24 reported the basics of the strike. It says that Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, or SSO, have managed to use a long-range weapon to score a direct hit on a Russian ship named the Grad, one of Russia's Bayan-M-class missile destroyers. The Grad is the exact sort of ship that Vladimir Putin would love to have in the Black Sea, but it'll never make it there. The Grad will never make it anywhere anymore, as Ukraine has managed to strike it at a staggering distance of almost 1,000 kilometers, which is around 620 miles, from its own borders. Russia's ship was in the supposedly safe waters of Lake Onega, which is in northwest Russia's Republic of Karelia, when it was struck. Russia could never have seen this coming. While Ukraine has enjoyed plenty of success with its strikes against Russia's oil refineries in recent months, those are massive and static targets that are ideal for such strikes. But a ship, a missile cruiser that is supposed to be relatively agile and capable of avoiding strikes from a distance, this shouldn't have happened. But it did, and the SSO is more than happy to tell the world what it's achieved. Taking to Telegram in the wake of scoring its direct hit on the Grad, the SSO provided much more information. At 0431 on October 4, 2025, as a result of successful actions of one of the units of the Special Operations Forces, the small missile ship Grad, hull number 575, of Project 21631, Bayan-M, was hit in Lake Onega, Republic of Karelia, the SSO said. This was an early morning attack, but it wasn't designed to take the static ship offline. The Grad was active, and it was on the move. The missile carrier was sailing from the Baltic to the Caspian Sea, the SSO adds. The strike hit the right part of the ship's engine compartment. Further details are being clarified. You may wonder why a ship en route to a sea that doesn't directly impact the Ukraine war would have been targeted. It's unlikely that the Grad, even with its assortment of missiles, could do any serious damage to Ukraine from a sea that's so far. But maybe this wasn't about taking out a threat. Perhaps Ukraine wanted to send a message to Russia. We have long-range weapons, and we can take out some of your most valuable naval assets from hundreds of miles away. After all, this is far from the first time that Ukraine has hit a vessel in or around the Caspian Sea. On August 14th, Ukraine also hit the Port Olaya 4, which is a Russian cargo vessel. At a range of about 640 kilometers, or just under 400 miles. That strike caused fire damage to the Port Olaya 4, causing the ship to submerge slightly. It didn't sink, but Ukraine didn't need it to. This strike may have been a test of what was to come about a month and a half later, with the attack likely being related to Ukraine's campaign to disrupt Russia's military supply lines. The Grad going down could do the same. It also deprives the Russian Navy of one of its newest vessels. Theoretically, the Grad would be in a better state of repair than most of Russia's other ships. Maybe Putin even had designs on sending it into the Black Sea, or maybe the Grad was heading to the Caspian Sea to resupply before heading back to the Baltic Sea, where it could terrorize Ukraine's European allies. Again, we don't know. But it also doesn't matter, as the Grad is now likely out of commission. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this strike is the sheer distance Ukraine's weapons covered to hit the Grad. This leads us to the obvious question: what did Ukraine use? The SSO isn't telling anybody, likely to prevent Russia from figuring out exactly how Ukraine conducted the attack. The less information that Russia has, the less likely it is that Russia will come up with a counter if Ukraine wants to follow the same blueprint for future strikes. Having said all of that, there are only two types of weapons in Ukraine's arsenal that might have been capable of carrying out a strike like this: drones and missiles. A long-range strike using a drone seems like the most likely route the SSO took to hit the Grad, especially given that Ukraine has long-range drones in abundance. We know that Ukraine has drones that can travel for almost 1,000 kilometers. The country's digital transformation minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, said as much in April 2024. His comments came in the wake of a spate of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian oil refineries, leading him to state, "Most of the drones that attack Russian oil refineries have a range of 700 to 1,000 kilometers, but now there are models that can fly over 1,000 kilometers." Fedorov didn't elaborate on any specific drones at that point, though he did say that Ukraine had 10 companies involved in the production and continued advancement of these 1,000-kilometer-plus drones. One Ukrainian drone that we know was in service for sure at the time of Fedorov's comments was the UJ-26 Beaver. Also known as the Bear, this drone has a canard layout, inverted tail, and a sleek fuselage that makes it look almost like a mini version of a commercial jet. Its range is around the 1,000-kilometer mark. However, its 20-kilogram payload, which amounts to about 44 pounds, isn't the most impressive that Ukraine's drones bring to the table. Still, the drone was introduced in 2023, and Ukraine has used it to hit Moscow and several other targets deep inside Russia. Perhaps the Grad was the Beaver's latest victim. The Lyuchi is another potential option. Referred to as Ukraine's answer to Russia's Shahid drones by Vikram Mittal in an August 2024 article for Forbes, the Lyuchi has an effective range of at least 1,000 kilometers. Upgraded versions have doubled that range. The drone can also carry a payload that's nearly 4 times the size of the Beaver's, and with an estimated cost of around $200,000 per unit, the Lyuchi is cost-effective enough that Ukraine might have decided to risk it on a long-range mission to take out a Russian warship. It's certainly effective enough to cause a decent amount of damage, as proven by Ukraine having carried out 80% of its oil refinery strikes up to the midpoint of 2024 using the Lyuchi. Ultimately, we don't know which drone Ukraine used, if it used a drone at all. However, we know that it's building these types of long-range drones in bulk. In July 2024, Militani confirmed that by sharing quotes from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. "We have really increased the production of drones," Zelensky said in July 2024. "Their range is now 1,000 kilometers plus. That is, there are 1,000, 1,200, and 1,300 kilometers, but we must understand that this is a drone, and its power is much less than that of a missile." Speaking of missiles, that brings us to the second possible weapon that Ukraine could have used. Western missiles are out of the question for the SSO's October 4th strike on the Grad. The US would never approve the use of an ATACMS in the Caspian Sea, and the UK would likely take the same approach with its Storm Shadow missiles. Not that it would matter, neither can strike anywhere near far enough to have been used against the Grad. However, Ukraine has developed an impressive defense industry since Russia invaded, and that industry has pumped out a couple of missiles that could have pulled off the strike. The best candidate is the Long Neptune, which is an upgraded version of Ukraine's R-360 Neptune missile. Long Neptune is capable of traveling anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers. Better yet, the R-360, on which it's based, is an anti-ship cruise missile that Ukraine has used to take out Russia's ships in the Black Sea. However, the Long Neptune is meant to be a very different beast. Despite being based on an anti-ship cruise missile, Long Neptune is designed to hit ground targets. Still, the Ukraine Crisis Media Center says that Long Neptune doesn't differ too much from its anti-ship cousin. The nose, cone, and tail section have not been modified, it reports. The wing and tail surfaces have been enlarged, presumably to balance the higher takeoff weight. With so few differences, perhaps there's a chance that Long Neptune is as capable of destroying Russian ships as the R-360 Neptune. If it is, Ukraine isn't saying. And that could play to Ukraine's advantage, keep Russia guessing, and counters to Ukraine's missiles are harder to develop. There's also the latest headline-grabbing Ukrainian weapon to consider. The Flamingo is a cruise missile drone hybrid that Missile Matters says is capable of traveling up to 3,000 kilometers. That's similar to the top end of the Long Neptune's range, though the Flamingo differs in terms of sheer firepower. With a 1.15 metric ton payload, the Flamingo packs a very heavy punch. Too heavy, perhaps, for that punch to be expended on a small missile cruiser that isn't even a direct threat to Ukraine. That's what makes both of these missiles less likely candidates than Ukraine's drones. Both may be capable, at least when it comes to range, but with Ukraine trying to maximize its wartime assets, it seems wiser to go with a low-cost drone than a more expensive missile, the latter of which could be used to destroy a Russian oil refinery or devastate a troop gathering inside Ukraine. The only thing that's certain is that the SSO isn't telling us what it used. It's more concerned with the target that it just hit. The hit Grad is one of the newest and most modern flagships of the Russian Federation, commissioned into the Russian Baltic Fleet on December 29, 2022, the SSO says in its Telegram statement. The ship's main armament is the Caliber NK missile system. Those are two very important pieces of information. First, when it comes to newness, the Grad was right up there with the most recent entries into Russia's navy. Bear in mind that this is a navy that's struggling to produce any new ships at the moment due to the pressure of Western sanctions. We'll dig into what those sanctions are doing later in the video. But before that, the mention of the Grad's main weapon may offer some insight into why Ukraine chose this ship specifically, beyond sending messages about its long-range capabilities and its ability to hit Russia's newest ships. Also known as the 3M14 Caliber, the Caliber NK is a land attack cruise missile, that has a range of between 1,500 and 2,500 kilometers. That's roughly equivalent to between 932 and 1,553 miles, with the latter of those ranges meaning the Grad could technically hit Odessa from the Caspian Sea. Should such a strike happen, the caliber NK would deliver a 450-kilogram warhead, which is equivalent to 992 pounds. Conventional versions of the missile use a high explosive warhead. However, Missile Threat says that there's a possibility that the caliber NK is nuclear capable. Ukraine taking a ship that can fire these missiles out of commission is a major victory in that context, no matter where the ship was when it was hit. If the Grad has been sunk, and we don't know yet if it has been, Ukraine will also be delighted that some of these terrifying missiles have gone down with it. Beyond the potential impact of this particular missile, RBC Ukraine says that the Grad belongs to a small fleet of Russian missile and artillery ships that were purpose-built to serve in coastal and inland waters. It's a River Sea class of vessel with a guided missile system that is one of the 12 Bayan-M-class ships that are supposed to protect Russia's internal maritime interests. In addition to Caliber cruise missiles, the Grad can also fire anti-ship missiles at naval targets, along with Zircon and Onyx cruise missiles, the latter of which the Grad fires from a vertical launch system capable of holding 8 missiles. The ship is rounded out with a 30mm duet system, which is automatic and features a pair of 6-barrel cannons, plus several machine guns and 2 rocket launchers. But this particular class of ship also has a weakness. It has practically no air defenses. October 4th saw the SSO take advantage of that fact. A missile ship that was designed to hit targets on land and counter threats at sea had no answer for the drone or missile that Ukraine sent flying its way. The SSO hit its target. Now the Grad, along with its impressive loadout, isn't going to be causing any issues for anybody apart from Russia anymore. The SSO hitting the Grad was a major attack on a day in which Ukraine unleashed hell on Russia, Euromaidan Press adds in its report on the strike. Overnight, Ukraine also unleashed an attack against the Kuryshin Efdiorg Syntez oil refinery in Russia's Leningrad region. That's one more added to a series of refinery strikes that have deprived Russia of around 40% of its refining capacity over the last couple of months. This particular refinery is one of the largest in Russia, with the loss of its 18.4 million-ton annual capacity adding another blow that limits Russia's gasoline and diesel stockpiles. Ukraine also conducted a strike in Kursk on the same day as the Grad attack. Euromaidan Press says that Ukraine's general staff has confirmed that it hit a transporter-loaded vehicle Russia uses for launching its Iskander ballistic missiles, along with the Garmon radar complex. So October 4th was a productive day for Ukraine. Here's why it was also an important day. As we mentioned earlier, it's unlikely that the Grad represented any real threat to Ukraine. Though it has missiles that could hit some parts of Ukraine from the Caspian Sea, those missiles would have to travel a long way and break through Ukraine's air defenses to have any sort of impact. Still, this is one more of Russia's missile ships that has just been taken out of commission, and that's no small accomplishment. Ukraine's effectiveness in the Black Sea has led to Russia practically withdrawing the entire fleet that it had stationed there. A third of the Black Sea fleet is done and dusted, with the rest having retreated to what Russia hopes are safer waters. With that fleet functionally inactive, as the Atlantic Council puts it, Ukraine may have seen a window of opportunity open up. It doesn't need to take out Russian ships in the Black Sea anymore. Why not strike further afield then? What we may be seeing here is the genesis of a new Ukrainian strategy in which it takes out ships beyond those that directly threaten its territory. This could be Ukraine showing Russia that its entire navy is at risk. Don't worry about the Black Sea fleet anymore. Worry about every ship that comes within 1,000 kilometers of Ukraine's borders. Russia's diminishing naval power won't be done any favors by the SSO's October 4th strike, and neither will its seeming inability to do a thing about Ukraine's asymmetric approach to dealing with Russian warships. Defense Express suggests that Ukraine has again showcased how effective its drones can be against almost any weapon Russia brings to bear. Ukraine's lighter, smarter, agile and precise forces are inflicting a lot of damage on much larger adversaries. Now the Grad is among the list of asymmetric victims. This is a ship that Daigle suggests may have cost Russia around $70 million to build, which is a lot of money to lose to a Ukrainian drone or missile that would have cost a fraction of that amount. If it was indeed the $200,000 Lyuchi drone that just took out the Grad, for instance, that represents a 350 times return on investment for Ukraine. Not bad for a country that barely has a navy of its own. And that brings us back to the point we raised earlier in the video, the Grad being new. This vessel has only been at sea for a couple of years, and it may now be wrecked thanks to Ukraine. Painful isn't the word to describe this blow to Russia's navy. Devastating is perhaps more apt, especially given the state that Russia's shipbuilding industry is in right now due to the West's sanctions. A lot of Russia's plans are falling by the wayside thanks to the effects of these sanctions. On August 15th, the Moscow Times reported that Russia's state-owned port operator, Rosmoport, has been forced to scrap a $200 million deal with the Onega shipbuilding plant for the construction of 2 icebreakers. The deal is now completely down the pan, with the reported reason being the constant construction delays that have hindered the project ever since Putin invaded Ukraine and the West began levying its sanctions. Remember the name Onega? It's the very lake where Ukraine hit the Grad while the ship was en route to the Caspian Sea. So the shipbuilding company named after and likely based near that lake isn't able to build 2 ships for which it would have received $200 million. That's bad news for Russia's navy. It means stockpiles of parts and components are already running so low that Putin's Arctic ambitions are now being put on hold. What hope is there that a replacement for the Grad is going to be built anytime soon, when icebreaker contracts are being cancelled? Another shipbuilding plant in Russia is dealing with a crisis too. On August 18th, UNN reported that the Khabarovsk shipbuilding plant has been forced to lay off about 70% of its workforce. The plant will only be left with about 90 workers. Obviously, a reduced workforce means slower turnaround times on contracts, assuming that contracts are coming in at all. Part of the reason for the layoffs is that the plant isn't getting any new orders. It's not getting orders because there is no money or materials for Russia to engage in shipbuilding right now. We said in the video's introduction that Russia's navy has been left defenseless by the SSO's strike on the Grad. You can take that 2 ways. On one hand, that defenselessness comes because Ukraine has proven it can hit a Russian ship, and one that was actively sailing no less from a distance of around 1,000 kilometers. That ship couldn't stop Ukraine's strike. It's likely that any others that come within range won't be able to do much either. So Russia's navy is defenseless in the sense that Ukraine can hit at a long enough range to force Russia not to risk its ships anywhere near Ukraine. And on the other hand, there's the shipbuilding angle. When combined with Western sanctions, Ukraine's strikes are rendering Russia's navy defenseless by attrition. Every lost ship is one that Russia isn't able to replace right now, and certainly not at any sort of pace that would allow it to maintain its already broken image of having one of the world's strongest navies. Ukraine just proved that it can hit a modern Russian warship using weapons it has built itself over the past couple of years. Think what that means to the West, knowing that it has more advanced weapons that could strike Russia's ships if needed. Russia's navy may not be finished off yet. It may never be completely eradicated, but it's proving itself increasingly useless, even as Putin tries fruitlessly to intimidate NATO. Do you want to know how bad things really are for Russia's navy right now? A Russian warship once touted as a superweapon has returned to service after 28 years. Lying beneath the surface, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen. Russia's superweapon warship is a floating Chernobyl wreck. Find out why in our video. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's latest strikes against Russia. And thank you for watching.